It's a medium of how people kind of convey their inner experiences.
A man-made expression that evokes emotion, feeling, pleasure, reflectiveness, thoughtfulness.
Any type of personal expression. So it can be music, it can be spoken word, it can be tattoos or drawings, anything that's an expression of yourself that's intended to be art, I think can be art.
Creativity that people can somehow enjoy and take pleasure from.
Something that makes people think, gives people something to enjoy or to think about.
Art is in the eye of the beholder. If it is something that as an individual you enjoy, or if it's something that invokes an emotion, then I would say that that is art.
I asked the guy who was working on tattoo for me, I told him, I said, hey man, you want to teach me how to tattoo? And he was like, sure. And so I just started tattooing and worked really, really, really hard to become slightly good.
I bought a bunch of crappy tattoo gear because all of my friends my whole life were like, you should tattoo. And I was like, now I have time to tattoo and I will practice. And then I practiced and I was fortunate enough to have a few friends who let me tattoo on them, and then they didn't turn out awful. And then I met my mentor, and 2 years later I was tattooing for money.
It's an infinite thing because what some people perceive as art, not everybody perceives as art. So I think art, like the definition of art would have to be a visual subject that changes for each person.
When you think of traditional art forms, you think of the fine arts, so you think of things like painting or drawing. And there are definitely in art history fields, there are kind of levels of art across time. Certain art mediums have been perceived as more important than others. As far as art history goes, I think very few art historians classify tattoos as art, but I think definitely within the past 2 decades, I would say tattooing has really just kind of skyrocketed as far as popularity. And so I think people are starting to respect it more as an art form.
I do think that tattoos are art. The definition of what art is and can be has opened up a great deal, particularly since the 1970s. I would consider the human body as a different sort of canvas than perhaps, the canvases that we traditionally identify as art. I do think that particularly since so many tattoo artists are working with particular styles, and in fact many times are influenced or replicating works of art on people's bodies, that it's really time to consider tattoos as art and think about what they mean.
Tattoos are most definitely art, and tattoos are art that is commissioned by a person for an artist to perform art on them. So it's really sort of a minimally two-person sort of arrangement. The person receiving the tattoo and designing the tattoo is an artist. The person creating the tattoo is an artist. So it's a unique form of art in much the same way that fashion or jewelry is a unique kind of art, because it's something that you wear, and in this case it's something that you're going to wear permanently.
It's personal. Like tattooing is extremely personal to tattooing. What one person sees as art, like Thomas tattoos it a completely different way than I do. Mm-hmm. So
like I use big bold lines,
and I don't.
Every client's gonna want something different too.
Right.
So you have to, within, I guess, your style, come up with what a client wants to live with. So that's what makes it very subjective. Because people walk in and be like, I want a frog with a purple flower and like a daisy on its head, and everybody's gonna draw that differently. Like you never know what it's gonna be.
I think there is a meaning behind every tattoo. Even if you interviewed people coming out of tattoo parlors, they might not be able to say, in beautiful paragraphs what this tattoo meant. But they wanted to do it. They wanted to have some kind of permanent depiction. Certainly, the smaller, sort of less visible tattoos, people might get more casually, and they might not think terribly closely about the design. But larger tattoos, and particularly, larger landscape tattoos that are over, large areas of skin, people think about these very, very carefully and thoughtfully. So I think there's no such thing as sort of a completely casual tattoo.
I think meaning's important in allowing the individual to feel secure about getting the tattoo and retaining the tattoo, because tattoos are becoming so popular now. Without assigning a meaning to it that will stick with you across time, people will feel the need to remove tattoos and things like that. So I think meaning is important when getting a tattoo, just to make sure that you will continue to want the tattoo as your life goes on, because it's a permanent marking.
If it's something that you're selecting and you're interested in, and in terms of any sort of artistic relevance, then absolutely it should be meaningful. It seems silly to go through that process and get something that's not meaningful, but I also, I'm gonna cop to it. I've seen that Tattoo Nightmares or Tattoo Disaster show, I'm trying to remember, and it seems like an awful lot of people have actually gotten tattoos that maybe didn't mean so much to them, but it's a lifelong commitment, and these are the same people who either have to get it covered up or removed.
I personally always make sure that I have at least 3 meanings associated with every tattoo that I have gotten thus far, just because that way I know if one doesn't apply to me in the future, if I feel like, the reason why I got one tattoo isn't a positive reason anymore, isn't worthwhile for me to connect to that tattoo anymore, I still have backups. I have other reasons for getting that tattoo.
To me, tattooing is, the tattoo doesn't have to mean like face value. You look at it, some people need that, this is a portrait of my mother and things like that. Mine are this is who I was with, where I was, time in my life. Cool, let's get a cool picture.
Which is all still a meaning, though.
Right.
To whereas, I think the question makes it to where it's, does it need to have, a deep, deep meaning? And it's like, a meaning is a meaning, I have a bunch of cartoons tattooed on me, which means something to me, but not really meaningful by definition, so to speak. And some people need it to be this is for my mama, and that's the reason they got a tattoo,
This is for my mama.
Oh!
The oldest tattoo we have is actually has been named Otzi the Iceman, and his tattoos we think we've dated to 3300 BC. So tattooing's been around just as long as any other art medium. They're probably one of the, in my mind, most traditional art forms, just because they've been around for centuries.
It's hard to know how long exactly tattooing has been in existence, because we don't have a good record of preserved skin. Skin tends to decay very quickly after a person dies, and so we only have occasional glimpses of preserved skin in the archaeological record, in mummified bodies or in bodies that have been accidentally frozen. On some of the frozen bodies that we have found in Europe and in central Siberia, we have tattoos that are 4,000 and even 5,000 years old. And those tattoos were finely made, especially the Siberian ones. So we know that the technology for tattooing has existed for at least 5,000, I would wager much longer than that, but we just don't have the evidence to show how much longer.
There's always this fluid notion of positive versus negative with tattooing that changes depending on what society dictates is important. I think the way that we've gotten to where we are today is very much affected by war, which I think is an interesting thing to think about. Every time there's a war, there's a spike in tattooing because soldiers get themselves tattooed. And so what happened right at the end of World War II is that we have all these individuals that got themselves tattooed during the war. And all of a sudden we flip a switch and it's the 1950s and people want to move to the suburbs and they want to have this clean-cut lifestyle and the white picket fence. And that's where the negative associations with tattooing start coming about again.
You go back to like 50 years and you're going to be post-war, you know, and you're going to be coming into NOM, and tattoos were still one of 3 designations. They were generally military, criminal, and then like freak, circus freak kind of people.
Right.
You know, and that was like pretty much that was all who had tattoos. You know, if you weren't a criminal or a circus freak and you had tattoos, you better have had done military service. That was the only way your tattoo would be accepted in the workplace.
You get into the late 70s and the 80s, and then comes about what tattoo historians like to refer to as the tattoo renaissance, where people start getting interested in getting tattoos again, which is really exciting. And that's when you see people like rock stars getting tattoos, and all of a sudden it's sexy, and people want to get tattoos for themselves because they see their idols on stage with tattoos, and that's interesting to them.
You come into the 90s, you get into more of the grunge culture, and you start seeing tribal things to represent individuality. That's where I think the art kind of started.
Tattoos were still very unusual. People were just starting, at least for that particular group of people, right? I think they were just becoming something that were more acceptable to a larger group of people. It seemed still very risky to get a tattoo.
People in the 90s are starting to get tattoos, and they're starting to have these conversations about, is it really a bad thing? And then you come until today, and it's no longer something people really worry about. You go and get a tattoo, and your friend, you know, depending on where you are in America, if you're in a place that has lots of tattoos, you go and get one, and you come back and your friend goes, oh, I see you have a new tattoo. And it's a conversation point. It's not something to be shunned or something to kind of shrink back from. People are genuinely interested now.
I think they still have like a stigma, I would say, right? I mean,
for the most part.
I think some people are starting to see like the artistic side of it, but I think as far as society goes, people cattle.
I think the oldest stereotype is that the people who get tattoos are kind of, they have a criminal element to them, right? So the old stigma attached to tattoos was, the oldest one is really sailors, right? The idea of sailors having tattoos, and that goes back to, you know, Captain James Cook in the, 18th century when he was basically patented the word tattoo. But I think the most common one in America, negative stereotype, is that gang members, bikers and such, they have those tattoos that can be intimidating.
The stigmas that are attached to tattoos are as a result of various cultural and religious injunctions that have come, to the present day. We have the fairly ancient Jewish injunction against permanent marks on the body. We also have a much more generalized, and I'll just say here, conservative as opposed to traditional or religious injunction that indicates that tattoos basically are just associated with people who are not very high quality. So you find many conservative people who will say, well, that person has a tattoo and therefore I cannot trust them, or they don't have as refined moral values or as good a character. In other words, a tattoo literally becomes a blemish on a person's personality or record.
I think there's definitely still a stigma associated with people who are heavily tattooed. So now the distinction is not whether or not you have a tattoo that makes you a scary individual or someone to kind of steer clear of, but now it's people who are excessively tattooed, who are perceived as almost deviant from the rest of society. They're the ones, I think, that still have that stigma, because it is something that is very striking, and it's not something that can be easily hidden by a shawl or something like that. You're just out there for the world to see, and it can be kind of startling sometimes.
You'll still be walking through somewhere, a grocery store, and you'll still see some old person will look at you like you're the scum of the earth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's still out there. You know, you'll have the hardcore people who are just, it's never gonna be accepted. It's always gonna be scumbag. You know, you're gonna stab my daughter in the eyeball as you walk by her in a grocery store. Like, people still look at you like that.
For any mass of people, it's hard to say, but yeah, I do think that there are social stigmas, but I also think that that's why they're popular. You know, when you put something like that on your body, you're making a statement. I think that you are a particular kind of person and that you have control and agency over your own body. You have the right to decide what you're going to put on there, how big or how small it's going to be, and who's going to be able to see it. So I think that that little bit of riskiness or that little bit of danger is part of why people are drawn to tattoos, in addition to part of the reason that there's still a little bit of judgment.
I think that stereotype is starting to go away because of the popularity of tattooing. And so as more and more people get tattoos, they realize, oh, not everyone with a tattoo is bad.
I think the imitation effect has been the primary reason for the increase in demand. People see tattoos in other people, especially they see tattoos in people they like or admire or in celebrities that have high status, and they say, yeah, I want that. I want that look. And then it becomes a compulsion, and I want to design it, yeah, sort of like that, a little bit of difference. People get sort of this sort of mental idea, yeah, I want to do this. Yeah, I want to do this. Like, I want to do it really bad. And then they'll start talking to one another. And I've seen groups of people talking about, yeah, I'm going to get this kind of tattoo, and yeah, let's go together and we'll all get this tattoo together.
It's immediate. It's the Instagram. It's the everything, you know, inundated in your face all the time. And in that, with more and more people getting tattooed, just means more and more tattoos are being shown. So as the younger generation gets older, they're like, I've been wanting to get tattooed since I was 11 because I seen Miami Ink.
Right.
And this guy had a full Irozumi sleeve, you know, with a koi going up the arm.
Shows like Miami Ink and LA Ink, and shows about tattoo removal and fixing bad tattoos have been on the rise. So the media realizes that it's a thing that's catching, but they're also affecting other people's decisions. So, you know, whenever you see something like LA Ink, you're seeing, you know, normal people that are untattooed or have never been tattooed walking into tattoo shops, and that gives people the courage to do that themselves. And so it's not as intimidating for them, because if they see it on a TV show and they see someone getting a tattoo, for example, to remember a mother that passed away from breast cancer, that is a different kind of association than they would have had previously with tattooing, perhaps. And it makes them think, oh, I could have a tattoo. And so by making it a more familiar thing, it's allowing more people to feel comfortable with the idea of tattoos.
I use Instagram myself to like check myself daily. Like, I am not that good. I need to be better and I need to work harder because, and so you follow artists, you know, that are world renowned, you know, guys who are booked out 3 to 5 years, $10,000 for a tattoo to be completed, you know, and people will pay it like that and not even stress, because some of this art is just, it doesn't even make sense, you know, especially like the Russians, Eastern Europeans, out of control right now. Like, out of control right now. They make, for the most part, American tattooers look like we're like kids with the crayon. They're really, really, really good. So they're stepping the entire industry up.
I absolutely think that art connects people. One of the biggest parts of, again, working with art for me is finding ways to connect it to everyday life and to make it compelling for people who may not otherwise be all that interested in it. But art covers politics, environmental issues, science, religion. There are so many really important things to talk about that artists are addressing in their work that it seems impossible for me that it wouldn't connect people. Although I also think too that one of the ways in which it can connect people is by having disagreements or different perspectives or even arguments about what art is and what it means.
As far as engaging with art on a daily basis, tattoos are the easiest way to do that. If you're engaging with people at all, you have a high chance of seeing some kind of art on their body. And so I think across the board, tattooing is probably the easiest medium for people to come into contact with every day, barring like photography, for example.
Yeah, they all came in, got their lips tattooed. It was like we just started college bonding moment kind of thing. I mean, they all got different things too. Like one got IDK, another one got As If, and then Wumbo from SpongeBob, and then the other girl got Frisky. But they left like, oh my god, and they're having a blast, and like for the rest of their lives they'll remember like
that time.
Me and these 3 girls I went to college with went and got our lips tattooed one night.
Last week, a woman came in. She's struggling with breast cancer. She's going through surgeries, things like that. I did the tattoo. It was very just a word. She's a survivor, I believe she wrote. She's going in for surgery next week. I connected with her while we were back here doing the tattoo. I paid for her tattoo. My little gift back to her, go feel better. To me, shit like that is what makes this, when you can give back just that little bit, those little moments are what make this worth it.
It's the most rewarding thing ever. Like we've cried with people, like laughed and hugged afterwards, and I mean like it's a pretty emotional experience, It's definitely a bond. Some people will just sit there and not say a damn word for like 5 hours, and other people will open up like the floodgates and will tell you everything, and you just, like he said, you just make a connection, and that's what it's all about.
Right now, tattooing is big business and it's popular and people are continuing to get more and more tattoos. I think the only thing that will cause sort of a ramping down of tattoos in the popularity of tattoos is as young people see the current wave of young people get older with their tattoos. Because many of the tattoos that are now being created for people look super for the first 5 years. And then after 5 years, and this is just normal cell turnover in the skin, and certainly if there's any sun exposure, the processes will lead to, a bleeding of the design.
Well, I can't predict the future, but it seems to me that things sort of come and go. So I think that there will be some people who remain very interested in them. And I've heard that they are addictive, that it's very difficult to get one and not want to get another one or 2 or 3. So perhaps there will be a contingent of people who continue. I don't think they're going away anytime soon. I just think they've become so much a part of our culture that you'll continue to see them at least the same rate that you're seeing them now.
I think it's just going to get more busy.
I mean, it really seems like that. I don't want to, jinx the industry or anything.
Right.
I mean, I think there would have to be something drastic in the media, negative, to change the idea, which is very easily done. You could just go boom, and people would be like squirrel, and then the whole and everything will change, and then we are jobless. You know, we are a bunch of dudes with like ink and needles sitting on our counters, which could happen very quickly because back to the trend thing.
Yep.
If it's not cool,
Won't happen.
it won't happen.
I think we've gotten to the point where so much of the population is tattooed that to back down now would be kind of strange, you know. Once you get to the point where so much of your population, both men and women, young and old, are tattooed, it's something you can't get away from anymore. It's something you can't avoid. Before, if it was just soldiers, for example, who were tattooed, that's one part of the population. Now it's, you know, teens, it's old people. I mean, there was a story the other day about an elderly woman who essentially escaped from her home care and went off to get a tattoo, and the woman was in her 80s, right? And so there are no longer boundaries between, you know, nationalities, genders, as to who's getting tattoos. Everyone's getting tattoos. So to go back and to retreat from this almost widespread acceptance of tattoos being okay would be very interesting to see. I think it'd be very difficult. And so whether or not it will remain mainstream as far as people wanting to get tattoos at the rate that they currently are, I'm not sure. But I think that tattoos are starting to evolve and change, and it's no longer just about traditional tattoos. We're now seeing people creating tattoos that we've never seen before, trying to fill, you know, corners of the market that they haven't filled before, trying to attract more people who might not necessarily want, you know, a traditional American eagle or something tattooed across their chest, but maybe something that's more delicate. And so I think as long as tattooing continues to change and evolve over time, then I think it will remain mainstream for a long time.